You are watching and listening to Bishop Brothers, a safe space where real issues being dealt with by real people are brought forth and discussed. Every week, the fire of love is lit as two 21st century bishops share the first century church message. Join and engage in the conversation, featuring grassroots interviews, book reviews, and God-inspired commentary. Here are your hosts, Aaron and John, Bishop and Bishop, Chief and Chief. But above all, they are brothers. Welcome aboard.
Oh, man.
Back again.
Current events tonight. Yeah, man.
Yeah, the beauty of the Christian church is we're never short of things to talk about. That's for sure.
Definitely, no doubt about it. Things to talk about, good, bad, and sometime in between.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, man.
So, there's a couple of really big issues I think we needed to talk about today. And, for me, they focus around these two major things that have happened since the beginning of the year. So the first thing I want to talk about is this He Gets Us campaign, right? Now, for those of you who haven't seen it, there's this campaign of commercials. They've been going on for probably about a year, but most recently it got a lot of traction and attention because they did a Super Bowl commercial, right? And so it was the first time they had a Jesus-centric commercial during the Super Bowl, and it's been hit with some mixed reviews. Now, on one end, there are people out there that think, hey, it's a good idea to do that during the Super Bowl because it's one of the largest audiences in America to be able to do that. And is there a better time to advertise, for Jesus, to get the name of Jesus out there? Then there's another side of the story where people have said, well, Jesus is not an iPhone. Right. Jesus is not a board game or a chips or, the other things that they sell during the Super Bowl. And they've equated it to basically trying to pimp Jesus out, right? And spending a lot of money to do it. And one of the arguments was, for $20 million, how many people could you have fed? How many, what kind of things could you have done? So before I kind of get into the background, because pro tip from a guy who used to investigate churches, always follow the money.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Always follow the money. But we'll get into that in a second. But I wanted to get your thoughts on where do you sit on that argument? Is it a good thing to do this type of stuff and spend that kind of money, or is it not a good thing?
Yeah, it always goes back to the question of motive. Nothing's been more weaponized and misused in the name of Jesus. I mean, people say, you scandalizing my name. And ask Jesus about that.
Right.
And so it's so unfortunate that even when people use this, tell actually the correct Bible story, the biblical story in the right way, it's still, you always got to look behind the curtain, look behind the man. And so it all depends on motivation. And that's what we can't ever deal with figure out sometime, because it can look like, the Bible clearly says that the devil Satan shall transform himself into an angel of light. It looks like light. It looks like, again, I'm not calling nobody a devil because I don't know their motivations, but it always goes back to what is your motivation? What's the reasoning behind?
Right.
However, that I can say this, just because something is badly motivated doesn't mean a good thing can come out of it, because God takes what's evil. Joseph clearly said to his brother, clearly, people don't believe what I'm about to say. What y'all did, you meant it for evil. Right. But God turned around and took my life and saved the whole world. Yeah. So miss me where that can't be. Right. It can be it can be bad motivation, like the brothers. Right. Sell them. First they would come there and say, no, we thought better than that, we're going to sell them to slavery. That's how many that's bad motivation. Right. That's terrible motivation, right? It's terrible. But it turned out for the greater good of the whole world. Right. God used him to say after all he went through. And so if people get to the light by it, God can still overcome bad motivation. So to answer your question alone, any form of the gospel, right, anybody preaching the gospel is always good news. Nothing changes. The messengers don't change because we're all flawed messengers.
Yeah,
we're all damaged messengers. Now that don't mean I got a right to use it because grace. Use grace like that for your own purposes. But any message that's tied to the gospel is can be used to bring somebody to light.
Sure. So, yeah, absolutely.
It's complicated.
It is complicated, yeah. And I think for me, and I'll let everybody know where I stand here in a second, but that's why it's important to follow the money, because with the money you get the context, you get the meaning, right. Why did they do it, that right. kind of stuff. For me, I wouldn't make something bad just because you spent money on it. Mm-hmm. Okay, so my issues with the He Gets Us camp, I do have an issue, and we'll talk about it in a second, but it's not that they spent the money. Mm-hmm. Okay. You could use that same argument. Well, how much money how many people could that have fed, right? You could use that same argument with a pastor's salary, right? Oh, you pay your pastor $60,000 a year, which isn't a lot. You pay him $60,000 a year. How many people could you have fed with his salary? Well, he's got to feed his family, right? And we've talked about, I personally support bivocational pastor over monopastor, right? Like just doing, but there are people that's their life, right? Their livelihood. And so I have no issue with compensating someone. And, it's the kind of the same thing when we talk about Game of Thrones, we talk about, Lord of the Rings with Amazon Prime, and it's, the whole idea of black elves and, that kind of stuff. Well, they can be pink because they paid for it, right? So if you have $20 million and you want to spend $20 million on, throwing the name of Jesus up on national television during the Super Bowl, that's your money, right? My issue is not with spending money. I spent money to write these books. I spent money. We spend money on this, right? To do Zoom, to do, the argument could be made. I mean, we probably have an overhead of about $1,000 a year, right? How many people could we feed? But in reality, you feed a ton of people, right? Through the church. So the idea of it just being a money issue, I have no issue with you spending your money however you want to spend. That's your money. And when I watch the He Gets Us campaign, they're not bad commercials. Now they do play more to the human side of Jesus. We talk about the hypostatic union, right? Jesus is both fully God and fully man at the same time. One theological critique I guess I could give with the He Gets Us campaign is it focuses way more on the humanity of Jesus than the divinity, right? Which humanity is just as important as divinity if we're talking about Jesus Christ, because without both, he's not who he said he was, right? And so, and the humanity side is more relatable, right? They say things like Jesus was an immigrant, or they'll say things like Jesus was a rebel, right? And those things are true. They're absolutely true. So on the surface, I have no issue with doing that, right? I've seen commercials from the United Methodist Church. I've seen there's nothing wrong with proclaiming the name of Jesus on TV, right? Would I spend $20 million to do it? I don't know. I don't have $20 million to spend, right? So I don't know if that's best or not best, or that's not the crux of my argument. The issue I have is, and I don't know if just being around toxic Christianity has just made me this way, but as soon as I see something like that, I automatically don't trust it. And that probably has a lot to do with the type of work that I've done over the last 2 years, and just I've seen the bad side. I've seen the negative. I've seen the consequences of those negative things. So I see it and I'm like, well, it sounds great. And to me, that's a problem. Why does it sound so great? What's going on? Right? Now, you may vet it. I mean, I hear you preach and I don't automatically think that. I hear my pastor preach. I don't automatically think that she has an agenda or something negative. But when I see it on TV like that, I'm like, well, it costs a lot of money to get there. Where's the money coming from? And the interesting thing about it is where the money's coming from. So, pull up my notes here. So, here's the issue I have with the He Gets Us campaign. Okay? So, He Gets Us is mainly funded by the owner of Hobby Lobby. Okay? Now, if you don't know who that is, right, I'm not going to mention his name on here, But the owner, you would think from what we're seeing, Jesus was an immigrant. You would think that this is a center-leaning group that is apolitical that's saying this, because very rarely would you hear a conservative say something like Jesus was an immigrant, right? Because that means we have to treat immigrants better, and or Jesus was a man of color. It makes people uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But these commercials have done that, and therein lies my problem. The person that paid for this commercial, or funded most of it, is the owner of Hobby Lobby. Now, here's my issue with the owner of Hobby Lobby, right? He's been embroiled in multiple scandals, okay? He was embroiled in... They started a Bible museum, and they filled it with stolen artifacts from countries like Syria, Israel, Egypt, countries that really, they were, in essence, trying to smuggle these artifacts out of these places, which to me is a problem. That flies in the face of what you just said with Jesus being an immigrant, right? When you say we need to respect immigrants, we need to respect people of color, you did neither with this, because you stole from these countries. That's what you did. You took their cultural property. You took it from them, right? That's a problem. Okay, and then on top of that, he had knowingly had forged stuff that he knew wasn't real, and put it in there as fact in this quote unquote Bible museum. So we have an honesty issue, we have an integrity issue, and we're not living up to what it's saying in the commercials. So that's where my problem is already starting to lie. Furthermore, this is a guy that he was on the side of argument with, if you obey the laws of the lockdown, you're not a real Christian. He was that guy. He was in that group of, you don't have any faith because you're wearing a mask, or Jesus Christ is my vaccine. That group. He was part of that group, which, okay, we got another problem, right? Furthermore, in that, he's a pro-lifer, and I don't mean pro-life like cares about life from cradle to grave. This is just a guy who withheld benefits for birth control from women. Meanwhile, so again, we go back to, you spent $20 million on this commercial, but you say you're pro-life. So much pro-life, you won't allow your employees or you try to block them from getting birth control with your insurance. But I don't see anything there that shows me that you're interested in anything else with life. What about euthanasia? What about children while they're alive? What about, any of those things? You've done nothing in that respect. All that to say this, my issue with the commercial is not the commercial or the fact that it was put on during the Super Bowl. I don't care, personally. My issue is your fruit doesn't match your root. And to me, that means you're trying to hide something.
Yeah. Well, this is Black History Month. So I'm going to frame following your line, but frame it from my perspective, from a Black perspective. I guess I'm not speaking for all Black people and Black people. I just speak from my experience and people that I experienced around me. This is something that I guess that's why I didn't really get into a lot, because from in my mind, I can hear it right now. I can hear my dead grandmother saying this right now. You're talking about, okay, the message and what's behind the message. The message might be good, but what's behind it? And that's always difficult. But from a Black experience, my Black experience, what I heard growing up in my house, it's tied to context. Don't believe nothing the white man says.
Yeah.
Just period.
Yeah.
Forget doing an investigation.
Yeah.
Forget going on the internet and looking up.
Absolutely.
If you are just looking at you can talk to me, but I'm not gonna believe nothing you say. And I had to that because when you embed things in people when they're young, it's more root and fruit, right?
Yeah.
When something's rooted in you, it's hard to up those roots. So I guess I always look at things to try to get the message out of it and not worry about, because I'm trying to fight off what my grandmother told me. Because of her experience, her mother was a slave. It doesn't matter. She She heard stories of how white preachers used to come with the Bible to motivation and have, slavery is good. And then her mother came out of that. She lived through the Depression, all that kind of stuff, and she seen her view of white people was totally different than mine would ever be.
Right.
But she still instilled in me her belief system that anything that a white person is telling you is badly motivated, is no good in it, just inherently because they're white. So I can say, I'm not speaking for all black people, I can tell you for black people, it's really kind of like what we do. We kind of like got to end, but I hear what you're saying, but what's behind, what you really mean or what's behind. As far as the money issue don't, let me tell you something. This is why people are not being fed because of lack of money.
Right.
People are not being fed because of lack of will.
That's a fact.
We just justify it in our own way, in our own mindset of how we want to do things. And the church particularly is just take the money and do what they want with it. It's not a lack of money. We have money to feed people. Right. That's a lack of will. So this notion that you can spend money on a lot of other things. Yes, you can. Yeah. But the church, the world, is not feeding people because of a money issue. Right. It's a lack of a will issue. Person do want with someone, like I agree with you, but I see what the people are saying and looking into the person. But I would say that we was talking before the show. What I found out, when I studied history of enslavement and how slave preachers preached, all what they did, the gospel is going to come forth.
That's true. Yeah.
The gospel is of the gospel, no matter whose mouth it comes from. The gospel, and it still sets people free. Yeah. It still sets, it's a liberty. So if somebody, their intentions, my point is their intentions, like Joseph Brothers, might have been bad, but God can still use that message for somebody to get. No matter what like Joseph Brothers, no matter what their intent was, his scandals, because they went along to their father, everything about somebody being dead. I don't think this man did that, but the intent was good. So my prayer is that in this, even though that if it leads somebody to Christ, if it leads somebody to Jesus for turn life around, hey, you know what? You got to answer for what you got to answer for.
Sure.
In the end, and so, but I get your point of that because, it's a lot. But I just hope somebody can get something out of it because I believe even in enslavement that message, something gave them hope.
It's true.
Even though the messenger was paid off by the slaveholders, keep them at bay, keep their mindset. Yeah. Something from that message gave them hope to want to live, because who would want to live through that? Right. And so that's what I have to take out of the message, that I hope that even though ill-gotten intentions, ill whatever, that somebody, hey, you know what? It made them think about their lives and their eternal salvation.
Yeah, and I would agree with you. I think we both agree. I don't care what you do with your money. That's your money. Yeah. Nobody comes into my house and say, well, John, all this money you spend on books and stuff, how many people could you feed? Yeah. Okay. And I agree with you. It's not a money issue. No. The U.S. generates trillions of dollars a year.
We need to take care of the church, what they do with the money before we get look what these preachers are doing with the money. Look how they browbeating people for money and not doing anything. So we need to, on the money issue, the church has no credibility because we need to clean our own house.
Agreed.
On that.
And at the end of the day,
and I'm not talking about salary. I'm just talking about just the fraud, waste, and abuse.
Absolutely.
Of it. And people not giving. And
at the end of the day, this isn't church money.
No.
Right. This is this man's money, and if that's what he wants to spend, that's his business. Right. It's very much like Dion. I never thought I'd be in a place where I'd be defending the owner of Hobby Lobby. Like, I have a lot of issues with the owner, but what he does with his money is his business, right? Yeah. Like, that's not my place. I'm not going to tell that man what to do with his money.
I just believe that God is, when people do this, God for whatever reasons, God has purposes in anything. He can twist it around like that. Like, go back to what Joseph says. You had an ill-gotten gain from this. You wanted to do this. He probably has an agenda, but I just, my belief system is nothing. Because of the force of God, nothing in the end can stop the gospel.
That's true.
In the end, no matter conservative, liberal, whatever your agenda is, that was well around before.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
For those in America, for those all this stuff we talk about, the gospel was here.
Yep.
And nothing's gonna stop. I just don't, because if it does, then where's the hope?
Yeah.
And so no matter how it gets out, if so who, I guess my question was this. So okay, we know all this about this person. So if a person comes to you and say, you know what, they don't know nothing about this. Mm-hmm. Hey, I watched a Super Bowl commercial, and they don't know, and I started going to church again. I called my pastor, who hadn't called in 2 years. Me and my wife looked at each other and said, let's work on our marriage again. Let's do it. If that spurred to that, who cares?
Right.
You think? So I'm supposed to give them a laundry list on this? I'm supposed to no, that's not my role. My role is to say, okay. And so I think we get where we spend our energy is. So yeah, but I get the people looking at that. But yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing that got me was everybody was arguing about this man spending his money.
Yeah, that's
like that misses the whole point of any issue that I have. Like, this man can spend his, if he'd have spent $20 million on a private jet, nobody would have said, no one would have cared.
Okay, but here's what I would say. If you're gonna complain about that, and you say nothing about players, no matter what's for it, getting $100 million contracts, and you say nothing, you getting paid countless to live several lifetimes to play a sport and a game, and a teacher and a doctor can barely survive. Miss me. If you're not complaining about that, miss me with that argument. You have no credibility argument when you happy because just throw a name out there. LeBron James got $50 million contract so he can be on your team.
Right.
Miss me about complaining about money. Because you have no credibility.
Yeah.
I'm just a big time player that people know.
Sure.
When you about contracts and stuff like that, and you say nothing about that,
right?
No, it's just.
And I think it's also important to point out, like, because people, I can already see the comments now, right? I can see you jump all over Kenneth Copeland because he spends all his money on a jet, but you'll let the Hobby Lobby guy slide. Well, hold on a second.
Right, that's all.
It's very, very different.
Yeah.
The Hobby Lobby man is spending his money on what he wants to.
Yeah.
If he wants to spend his money on pink elephants for the rest of his life, he can do that with his money. Kenneth Copeland does it with church funds.
Exactly.
That's a very different scenario.
Different distinction.
So, although, I don't have a lot in common with the Hobby Lobby guy, and to be honest with you, I don't think he's that great of a person. Right. But I'm not going to knock a man for doing what he wants with his money.
Right. But that's the point. That's the point we just said. The church is not hurting for money.
Exactly.
Clean the abuse out of your own house.
Yes.
Before we talk about one individual spending money how he will for a commercial that has meaning to it that could possibly lead people to God. If it does, 100 plus million people, that's a lot of eyeballs.
Yep.
That might touch somebody.
It might. And they're not bad commercials. I'll be the first one to tell you. And I look for stuff because very similar to you, I had a grandmother who told me you don't trust Protestants.
Yeah.
Right? You don't trust British people.
Yeah.
Right? Because they'll take everything from you, right? Yeah. So it's ingrained in me when I see something, I can't take it at face value. I gotta dig. Right? But from what I saw at face value, I mean, I will give him credit. None of his personal political opinions showed up in the commercial.
Yeah.
Right? So, all that to say this, I have no issue with the Super Bowl commercial.
No.
My issues lie underneath and with the person, not with the commercial. And to your point, it is very likely somebody saw that, right? Who knows? Maybe somebody who has always been a high divinity follower of Christ, which is kind of what I was before I deconstructed, right? I never really focused on the human aspects of Jesus. I was always Jesus is God. But the human aspects are what make him relatable.
Exactly.
Right? And so when you play those up, right? He didn't deny the divinity of Jesus in these commercials. He just played up the other side. Right. Good can come out of it. I completely agree. Look at the Declaration of Declaration of Independence. Look at the Constitution of the United States.
My latest book is all about scars.
Yeah.
The divinity don't have scars.
Yeah.
I can relate to him because my whole book is on he rose with scars.
Right.
To see him not as a divine, pristine creature that we can't touch, but see him somebody because we have scars.
Right. That's right.
And so that's gonna work for some, maybe not for others.
Yeah.
But it's not nothing wrong with it.
Right.
Because he was both.
Right. You look at the Declaration of Independence, the concept of that all men are created equal. Now we know Thomas Jefferson did not believe that.
Right.
And that's made clear in the Constitution with 3/5 compromise, right?
Yeah.
But look at what it has done now. Now look at that sentence is used to liberate people who the author thought were not human beings, that were property, right? But we use that all the time now. All men are created equal, right? It means something. So yeah, it came from not a great place, right? Not the best human being, but look at what it has become. So you can speak things out, and you can do commercials, and you can write things, and in 100 years, 200 years, 300 years, it may take on a whole new life and have very, very valuable meaning, even to people it was meant to hurt. And that could happen here. Right. It could. So, yeah, I will never be in the same boat with the owner of Hobby Lobby, right? Just because of the other things we mentioned. But, if I'm just being honest, in this particular instance, I don't have an issue with the commercial.
Well, you know what? I'm not hopping on Copeland's yet neither.
That's a fact.
So what's it? I mean, we're all flawed. I mean, if we want to go on that road, I'm not hopping. No, because if I feel that if I believe that your money is from a source of hurting people, then why am I going to go down that road and enjoy it? Then I really don't. My belief system really don't work. So yeah, it's same thing.
Absolutely, same thing. So that's one of the big things that's kind of going on in Christendom right now. The other thing is the Asbury Revival. Okay. So for those of you who are like me and sometimes live under a rock, it's actually over. It ended, I think, either yesterday or maybe 2 days ago. But so I'll just give you some facts about it. So Asbury University is a private university affiliated with the Wesleyan Holiness Movement, right? So, the Holiness Movement, Pentecostal movement. Chapel attendance is mandatory if you go to this school, right? So, which is common. When I was at Liberty, when we were on campus, you were required to go to convocation, right? You were required to go to the morning service, and you could be docked points and be fined for not going to convocation. Okay, so this is it's not an uncommon thing at seminaries, right? I mean, if you're going to train to be a pastor, you should probably be going to church on Sunday and getting that experience, right? No argument with that here. So, but attendance is mandatory. So on Wednesday, February 8th, a handful of students remained in the chapel following a regularly scheduled service. Okay, the student body president was one of them. And he said that one student decided to openly confess his sins to the group. And he said the atmosphere changed when that happened. The entire atmosphere changed. His quote is, "For seemingly no reason, at first on Wednesday, February 8th, it didn't end." That's kind of the logistical side of what's been going on. On the deeper side of things, what's been happening here since Wednesday is there's a young army of believers who are rising to claim Christianity, the faith, as their own, as a young generation, and as a free generation, and that's why people cannot get enough. So this went on for 2 weeks. It just ended. And it was standing room only the whole time. A lot of people were there. They're talking about how a lot of younger Christians were there. So the first thing I want to talk about is revival in general. The concept of revival is almost a uniquely American thing. Revivals were not common in Europe. They're not common amongst Orthodox or Catholic or any of those. It really is a very uniquely American thing. And it spans, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it spans cultures as well, right? I've seen predominantly white churches have revivals. I've seen predominantly black churches have revivals. It crosses denominational boundaries. And when they happen, when they're genuine, they're a huge emotional thing, right? I want to get your take on revivals in general. Here's my take on revivals in general. There's nothing wrong with them. I don't have a problem with, especially if it's organic and we're not trying to squeeze money out of every person that comes through the door. It doesn't become a money thing. It doesn't become a, let's put money in the building fund type scenario. There can be actual, really natural, amazing things that happen. In Celtic Christianity, we would call that a thin place when it's genuinely happening, right? That means that the space between heaven and earth has kind of thinned out, and you're having a genuine experience with Christ, right? And so if that's occurring, I have no issue with that. I think that's beautiful. I have some questions we'll get into in a second here. But they're actually very common at Asbury. So 1905, 1908, 1921, 1950, 58, 70, 92, and 2006, there were similar revivals at this place, right, in this particular chapel. So I guess my question for you is, one, what's your opinion on revivals? And two, what are some pitfalls that if a revival breaks out, we need to be careful of? Because we always want to separate between the charlatans and something that's genuinely occurring, which I believe can happen.
I grew up around revivals, and so I really got strong words. I just actually hate them. Yeah. I don't see because I grew up around them, and it's when I think back on it, it's just as much emotion. It's normally centered around a charismatic figure. Mm-hmm. Somebody who's very charismatic, who can bring in a crowd, keep a crowd going, get some money going. They seem to be emotional outlets for people who really needs therapy, treatment, talking to a doctor, and it's to me it's almost a conjuring that people are trying to conjure. So I guess they take it from the day of Pentecost, or that's on where he said in the upper room and then wait till I come. Revival means something is dead, and you're trying to revive it. I think of DeMar Hamlin laying on the floor of the Cincinnati Stadium. They had to revive him.
Right.
He was stopped breathing, heart stopped moving. God is not dead. Right. We might be dead, and so what are you reviving? You're not reviving God. Or is a revival for dead Christians or dead believer? What are you trying to revive? Because God cannot die. Right. Now, and we believe that Jesus already did die and rose from the dead. So what are you reviving? So as a child, I hate it because we always went to him, and you had fun as a kid because a bunch of music stuff going like that. But then looking back on it, it was just like a conjuring up emotion and using people's frailties and situations and life experiences and shortcomings and life, what they're going through in life to get a certain result. Most of them, I think about money, conjuring up money and bribing people out of money. Right. I seen no life change from it. I seen a Damascus moment from where your whole life is changed from. So I've never been too big of a revival. I mean, I don't think we've ever had one. Maybe at my father's business, but we did more like the least among us to have services to try to get money to help us in the food pantry, like that. It was a purpose, but the emotional ones I seen, I just
I would agree with you. So initially, when I hear the word revival, again, very similar to the He Gets Us. What's behind the curtain? Why are you doing this? That's the first place I'm always going to go, because maybe it's not a good character that I have, but it is a character trait. I'm not going to initially trust unless you're verified in my life, right? If you say something to me, I'm going to trust it because you've proven time and time again what you say is trustworthy, right? So you're in a different level, but not everybody gets to that level with me, and actually very few people get to that level with me. So when I see this, I'm like, okay, what's going on behind it? And a couple of things stood out to me. The first thing that has stood out to me is, I don't know how to say this without not being mean, the caucasity of this revival, right? It's just
white.
It's very white, right? And so there's nothing wrong with white people having a revival. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just what it's being billed as when you say, this is a Christian, like the capital C Christian church is coming together for this huge revival, and then when I go look at it, it doesn't look like I think heaven's going to look, right? That's interesting to me, that if it truly was a capital C church revival, why is only one section of the community there? Yeah. Okay, I don't know. It could be innocent. I don't know. I'm just saying, okay, you're already not passing the sniff test with me. Okay, then on top of that, Fox News is covering it, right? So now we have a problem because I've had an issue with that particular news channel, right? And then Tucker Carlson starts talking, and I'm like, okay, You don't get to talk to me about anything spiritual. Just like I don't get to talk to you about anything political, right? I'm not in the political realm. Why are you talking about a revival, right? Here's the other issue I have with this particular one. There are rumors, I don't know, this isn't verified, but there is actually a prophecy that came out of Bob Jones University. This is a real thing. You can look it up. There's a prophecy that says the year the Chiefs win the Super Bowl, there's going to be this massive revival, right? Across the country. And when I heard that, they were like, they think that this is the fruition of that prophecy. So here's my problem with that. Chiefs won 3 years ago. There's no revival then. I'm pretty sure they beat, or they maybe they play. I can't remember who won, but I'm pretty sure they played the Minnesota Vikings in the Super Bowl like 40 years ago. No capital C church, whole church is changing. Revival happened then, right? So now I'm starting to question. Okay, did this revival happen because you were trying to force a charismatic prophecy to come true? Or does it just happen to be that way? I'm not a fan of coincidence, right? People do things intentionally. So to me, now I have questions about that. So now I'm starting to question all this stuff. And again, when I look upon, because they had live cameras and, it was 15 days capacity, people 24 hours a day. I'm not saying it wasn't a big event, and maybe it had proximate meaning to people who were there. But to make the statement that this is like the revival that is going to change American Christianity for Generation Z for years to come, you only had one section of the culture in there, one section of the Christian community, and it didn't look like you were being very inviting of anyone else. I'm not saying that they did the race thing. I'm just saying I can just go off what I saw, right? And then I see this one where they're throwing money on the stage. Just everybody just walk up there throwing money on the stage. I'm like, we're making it rain in church now? Like, one guy, I literally watched him go up there and do this, right? And I'm like, okay, what is really going on here? To me, all those symptoms point to there's an agenda. That's just how I feel about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sitting up here thinking about, you got the Gospels and you got the Bible, and you got Paul and all the great writers of the Bible. So the notion, and when you study people's writing, and when we just read people's writing, the notion that a move of God is tied to a sporting event that didn't exist when they wrote the Bible, it's just beyond ludicrous. The move of God is tied to a sporting event. A sporting event, a football game, which God has to wait till after the football game that he already knows who's going to win.
He's relying on Patrick Mahomes.
No, but see, hold on, he's all knowing, right?
Right, he knows what's going to happen.
God already knows, but he's got to still wait until after the football game. So now I'm going to dispatch whatever to have this move of God, and I mean this stuff, and then we wonder why people don't want to be Christian. We wonder why people don't want to have nothing to do with this. Because this pseudo is just silliness. This is silly season. God, the move of God is contingent upon not just a football game, a certain team winning the football game. And it's like, I wish I could have a discussion with Paul and all those guys say, I mean, do you hear this? So it's not based on what y'all wrote and what y'all put forth and how God moved on y'all to write these words. No, we got to wait to the football game though. We got to wait to the 21st century and wait to this certain team that we don't know the name of yet, but it's 2,000 years ago. But we got to wait, and then we're gonna have revival, and it's tied into the next time a particular, not just a particular football team wins a Super Bowl, and now that's our signal.
Which won the Super Bowl 3 years ago. Yeah. Could have happened then, but it didn't for some reason.
But that's our signal to go forth. And now this is God's endorsement, or this is God's signal to now move, God. I mean, we're not even serious.
And this is the trash I'm talking about. That trash leads to this trash. This is why I have a problem with these revivals. To me, this is a show, right? Oh, yeah. We are putting on a show for the world, right? And here's my problem, right? You will sit there and you will talk about these revivals and you talk about these prophecies, you talk about all this stuff. Meanwhile, over in the Southern Baptist Convention, I don't know if you heard about this, but Saddleback Church ordained a woman pastor. The SBC kicked them out of the denomination because that's their rule, right? Mm-hmm. Women can't lead. Mm-hmm. Here's my problem, though. A year ago, a list of over 700 SBC pastors that had raped, pedophilia, abuse of women, abuse of men, abuse of power, spiritual abuse, fraud. The SBC knew about all 700 of them and did nothing. Of course. But we're going to draw the line at women pastors. See, this is why nobody wants to be a Christian. Yeah. You see how hypocritical that is? Right. Meanwhile, we're not going to. And while we did this revival, no one stood up and said, we condemn Christian nationalism. No one stood up and said we condemn pedophiles in the pulpit. No. We want money and we want an emotion and we want good music and we want all these accoutrement to elicit an emotion so you'll start making it rain on the stage. It's a stunt. And you can't tell me until we stop looking for revivals to save the church and start looking for ourselves to start cleaning out the house and getting rid of 700 pedophiles and rapists. Until we start doing things like that.
God, the church that Jesus gave his blood for, that he built, doesn't need a revival.
No.
He's done it all. We don't know, because it's not dead.
Yeah.
We might be dead, but the church is not dead. It will never die. Right. It can't. It says the gates of hell should not prevail against it. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't need to be revived. What they're trying to get is trying to be revived. Right. They want to get back spun up because of what their agenda is.
Yeah. They want their form of Christianity to survive. They want repression of women. They want these things. They want those things to continue.
But they want to be able to continue to do their crimes, to rape and abuse and molest and stuff like that. But as soon as a woman gets in place, now we got a problem with that's you're crossing the Holy Grail, because surely a woman she has no place in this story of humanity, so we got to dismiss her because that's totally against God.
Right.
These revivals, they don't. I'm like, I have no interest in them because I serve a God that's alive. He rose from the dead. I have to take on the newness of life and use what He's instilled in me with life. But He's given me life. He's given me hope. I don't need no conjured up event, no charismatic preacher, no band. I mean, I love music. I love hearing a good preacher, but I'm not getting caught up in that, spun up in that, because that's about money and emotion, and nothing drives. One thing the church knows is nothing drives money like emotion.
It's a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nothing drives a cult more.
The reason why people spend $7 million for a Super Bowl commercial because they know people are going to watch it.
It's true.
That's the most watched event of the year
in America, at a minimum. Yeah. Right? The only thing that beats it is the World Cup.
Yeah, but that's there for years.
Yeah.
Every year, that's 100+ million people. So because they understand what eyeballs on screens, what people know. So
absolutely.
I just think it's just I just don't believe in conjuring things up, and and we're talking about that. But even these Facebook people and all kinds of stuff, they own Facebook, and God's got a blessing for you, and this and this, saying things you can't prove, and there's no tangible to it. I don't believe in that either. I mean, I just don't believe in the blessings. It's in the Word of God. I just don't believe in trying to conjure up. I'm prophesying to you that you're gonna have prosperity. Okay, so what if they call you, text you back and say, "Well, I just got a letter from a note that I got cancer," but you said yesterday, "This is my month."
Yeah.
For what?
See, for death.
You gotta be careful.
Careful.
This conjuring up stuff trying to make people feel good about something that God hadn't said. You don't know what somebody's going to have to go through. I sent a post. Yeah, I did a book signing last Sunday, and the man just said, "My son died in a car." I didn't know when I was speaking that. I didn't prophesy to him. He said, "My son, I see what you're saying about your scars, and about faking being okay, because my son just died horribly in a car crash."
Yeah.
I had no clue till he told me.
Yeah.
But I was speaking and say, you don't know how much you touched me. I didn't know what I was touching.
Right.
We want to go across the Holy Grail and know what we're touching. Just preach the gospel, and the gospel will find people.
Right.
But this conjuring stuff up, and like I said, it's just, and now you got coverage, and Fox News is covering. You're gonna read what Fox News is covering because who was there? We know what it's about.
Right.
But
yeah, as soon as it shows up on Tucker's show, I'm sorry, maybe it's me, maybe I need to see somebody about it. But as soon as it shows up on his show, I'm like, there's an agenda here. Automatically, there's an agenda. So for me now, the concept of revival in its truest form, and you're right, it's not about reviving the church, it's not about reviving God. Those aren't things that revival can do. Now that might reawaken something within you to make, kind of like the He Gets Us commercial, might reawaken something in you. And if that's the focus of what you're doing, my thing is but I maybe it's just me, but I don't need that to be renewed. Right? I've done that in my own personal, there's times I've been in my own personal prayers or in my own personal meditative moments with Christ where I have been broken down by the Spirit and I'm crying, right? And I don't even know why. I don't need a full, I don't need a band and a fog machine and a whole church of people and, everybody coming down to cover it in the news. I don't need all that to get that from God. And I think that's the thing we're missing is we think that that's going to save the church, quote unquote, right? That's going to save us. That's going to save. No. What all that does is elicit emotion, which only lasts for a little while. I guarantee you by this time next year, no one's going to remember that Asbury.
What we've done is we have created a society and created an environment within the church that people are looking for everything but God.
Right.
Where's the music? How big is the choir? Where's the smoke? Where's the light show?
Who's preaching?
Where is this? Who's preaching? So nobody's looking for Jesus. When you study the New Testament, when you study the old preachers, when you study, preach the gospel. Preach to the broken. This is what the gospel is for. But we don't have time for that because that don't sell. That don't get that doesn't get the people in the seats. And we go from everything, but to what we're supposed to be. The gospel doesn't need to be revived. When Jesus rose from the dead, that was it. It was over. It doesn't need to. And when you do that, you're gonna touch somebody. And the problem is, we want to know it though. Quit sending out these fleeces, trying to get people to look for something that's good, and tie that to the gospel.
Right.
The gospel is there for the good or bad. And you mess up because you tied to. The gospel is not tied to everything good.
That's right.
The gospel is tied to suffering.
That's right.
It's tied to heartache and pain just as much as tied to joy. I mean, is there a book in the Bible called Lamentations or not? Or did I miss it?
Oh, yeah.
Lamenting is part of God. I mean, last time I read, Jesus wept when he found out about Lazarus' death. What are we doing?
Yeah.
Stop this good news theory that everything's supposed to be good. And so reviving is supposed to wake up something in you to cause you to come to God. And we call people to come to church.
Right.
To come
there
to
it
this.
is. Yep.
Come
That's
to
what it really
building.
is.
We're not coming to God. And therefore, like you said, next year you're going to end up short because it can't feel you. The emotion's going to fade. The lights are going to go down. The news camera's going to go away.
Yep.
Now what you got? You got life. Now you're living.
Yep.
So
what you have is a ton of people who had all these expectations from an event like this, and God didn't come through, right? God didn't heal my cancer. God didn't do this. God didn't do this for me. God did, because you promised them that because of revival, these things would happen, and then none of it happened. And so what do you get? You get people that deconstruct and leave the faith entirely because they can't trust you anymore.
And you know too that people live a whole life. They call them conferences now. That's kind of the word for they're really. But that's what they call them, convocations, conferences. And they go year after year after year. Year after year after year. And they get emotion, and then what you live in. They're not tolerant, and so they go. Right. It becomes, revival becomes a lifestyle.
Yeah.
Not living.
Yeah, and it becomes a necessity because now I need the money to make it through the year.
Warren Hamlin's not reviving now, he's living now.
Right.
They revived him.
And now
he's not getting revived every day. They're not pumping this shit, thank God.
Right.
He's living now. You go to revival, but it's not because they don't want you to live because you won't come back to the revival.
Right.
See, it all becomes a vicious cycle of you need me, you need this, and people spend money after money going to these, and I get to all these famous conferences.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what's changing your life? What do you get? What are you getting from the conference besides sign up for next year?
Mm-hmm.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
So I cruise a lot. I understand the cruise line I go, their goal is to get me to sign up, right? Because they understand 85%. So they're going to keep me happy on their cruise.
That's right.
Because their job is to get me to come back because 85% of their business is repeat customers.
That's
so
right.
You're not a cruiser yet.
I've only been on one.
So you're not a cruiser. So no. I go twice a year.
Yeah.
So I'm considered a cruiser.
Right.
So guess what? They always send me the stuff. They're not sending you stuff, right?
No.
Because you ain't cruising. Now, if you start back, I'm just trying to make a point.
Absolutely.
See,
yeah.
Because they
it's
know
good business.
They want me to come. So let's keep. We like you, John, but you gave. But we'll show you the commercial.
Right.
But we're gonna send Williams because we kind of count their money.
Because you're a tier 1 supporter.
We see data.
Right.
They come twice a year, so let's make sure we keep them.
Let's keep them coming twice a year.
Yes, because we want to make sure we got this business.
That's right.
This is what the church has done.
Yeah.
How can we keep them? Forget Jesus. How can we keep them coming? So.
Yep.
We can get them charged back up. Yep. Just like they do on the cruise line.
Yep.
What can we do to make you happy?
Mm-hmm.
To keep you coming back.
Yep. And that's why it's important to remember everything that glitters isn't gold, and everything that's quote unquote Christian ain't Jesus. Right? So, yeah, it's very important.
And everything that conversely, everything that with bad intentions can be used for good.
Yeah, it can absolutely.
The notion that God can't take something for ill to turn it around. You don't even understand the Bible.
Right. And to your point, is it possible that someone at this revival had a true experience and it's going to change their life? Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Exactly.
But it goes back to what we're looking at Bishop Brothers is I'm glad that person got that. But unfortunately, in these situations, the data tells us for every one person that has an amazing experience, there's 10 that get let down. Yeah. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Well,
all right.
It's been a good one. Yeah. You're not wrong. Jesus is not a drug. We don't go to him to get high. No. Yeah, that's a fact. It's a good one. We're going to take next week off. Bishop's going up to rock the house up in Austin.
Yeah.
With his team.
Yeah.
Mock the house.
Yeah, mock the house. We're going to take a little break. Yeah, we're going to be in Austin for the mock trial. Pray for the team and hope they do good. I know they're going to do good. Yeah, I'm back in the lab, man. Yeah. I'm back in the. I thought I was gonna take. Nah, guys put me. I got an itch now. Like wow, I'm back in the lab and. I don't know, maybe I'm looking at late fall, early next year for another release. And,
well, so. It looks like for me, I have about 3 chapters left to write. Okay. And we'll probably be releasing at the beginning of summer, possibly. Just kind of depends on how the editing process goes, but and already, and like you, I have the bug, right? So already, like I'm writing this one, and I've already jotted down probably 3 different ideas for the next book, right? So that's the thing about writing. Once you catch it, there's so much that I want to get out, right? So, but
speaking of Jesus, speaking of writing, speaking of agony, I want to leave people with this. Y'all even thinking about writing a book? What I found out for me, I can't speak for him, but for me, the worst agony there is, there's a lot of them, but the worst one for me in my life at this point is to have a story inside you and not write it. Yeah. It's agony. You gotta get it out.
Yep. And it's healthy. So it's really good.
I hope you have agony, which not a mean agony, but I hope you get that story out because hey, only you can write it. So
that's right. Right. All right. Well, it's been great, and see you in a couple of weeks. Yes, and we'll be doing some straight out of context. So till next time.
Thanks for joining us on this week's episode of Bishop Brothers. Make sure to visit our page, Bishop Brothers, where you can like and follow so you'll never miss a show. While you're at it, please tell a friend about the show. The brothers salute you. Until we meet again, Godspeed.